How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing good, thank you. So, do you eat animals?
I do.
So, do you see any sort of ethical issue with that? Do you think it's wrong to eat animals or no?
No, I don't think so.
No. So, let's say we were eating humans instead of animals. Would you say that's wrong?
Yes.
So, would you say it's wrong to pay for humans to be holocausted and turned into hamburgers?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess my question is, what's true of animals that, if true of humans, would make you have that same attitude towards the human context?
Humans are endowed with reason and logic, and that makes them inherently different than animals.
Okay, so you mentioned reason and logic are the traits that humans have that animals lack, that makes it justifiable to holocaust animals but not humans. So let me ask you this: are all humans endowed with reason and logic?
No, but I also believe, I'm a Christian, so I believe that God made humans in his image, and in that he made humans different than animals, and that not only they have reason and logic, but he made them in his image, and also there's also morals that we hold that animals don't have.
Okay, I understand. So about that first thing that you mentioned about reason and logic, you understand that that alone wouldn't justify an animal holocaust. So let's say if we found humans that were mentally disabled, uh, it wouldn't be okay to holocaust them, or yes, in your view?
No, that would not be right.
Okay, so it then comes down to religious justification, right? So what would you say is true of animals that isn't true of humans that make them unworthy, makes animals unworthy of moral considerations, but humans worthy?
Aside from religious things,
No, no.
or
If religiosity is your justification, then I just guess expand on that. What do you mean by that?
yeah. Well, specifically more in the Bible, in Genesis 1, it says that God made man in his image and put man in charge of his creation, including animals and plants. So we are to take care of animals, not abuse them, but in being above them, that means we can also use them for food. But I wouldn't say abusing animals is okay. Like,
So wouldn't you say what we're currently doing to animals is abusive?
I think in some ways the way we treat cattle and the way we just give hormones to cows to make them just for meat is not good. I think we should take better care of the animals, but I think if done in a way that doesn't abuse the animals, it's moral to eat them.
Okay, so but do you agree that in most cases what we're doing to animals, for example, factory farms, like most meat comes from like 99% of meat and animal products comes from factory farms. Would you agree that in those instances what we're doing to animals is immoral, like putting them in confined spaces and then putting them in gas chambers, stuff like that? Would you say that's abusive? So why support that?
Those are good questions that I haven't thought very much about. I don't know very many details about how they treat animals, but that idea does sound bad. But I don't know enough to say opinions about it.
Wait, so let me ask you this: do you believe in a benevolent God,
What do you mean benevolent?
all good? Like that? Do you think God is good?
I do believe God is good.
Do you believe animals have a capacity for suffering?
Yeah.
So, would you say, what would you think God's preference would be? Do you think God's preference would be to leave animals alone if we have all the alternatives, or to harm animals and kill them even if we have all the alternatives? What do you think the opinion of a benevolent God would be about that?
I think it depends what you mean by good and how you define what good means. A good God created this earth and made man above his creation and in that above the animals. And I do believe that it's okay in God's sight to eat animals, but treating them poorly, I don't know how to define that properly because you have to define everything and what you mean by treating animals poorly, but treating animals poorly is not moral.
Okay, so a couple of things about that. So you said that God basically gave us dominion over animals. So do you think that means that God doesn't care if when we do anything to animals? Like, is everything is permissible because we're above them? So holocaust them is permissible, raping them is permissible, or would you say that the interpretation of dominion would be more something like being guardians of the animals and taking care of them? And if we have options of not harming them, then choosing that harming them? What interpretation you think makes more sense if God is a good being?
Um, from my point of view, I think it's okay to eat animals, but he's also given us freedom to have different convictions. So if someone is convicted that it's wrong to kill animals and wrong to eat them, I would completely support them and say, do what you believe God has called you to do. But I'm personally, and I probably wouldn't eat, maybe not eat around them if it would cause them to want to eat just because I am. So I would respect someone else, but I do believe God has given us the freedom in that way to decide what we think is wrong.
Okay, so let me ask you this: what would you say, from your point of view, from your values, and also from God's perspective, if you had two options, you have a plant-based burger or you have a little dog here, would it be preferable to eat the plant-based burger or to stab the dog to death and eat him? What would you think would be preferable, number one, from God's perspective and from your own point of view, from your values?
The plant-based burger, dogs aren't. They're different animals. I don't know if in other parts of the world dogs are normal food, but at least in the U.S. and in Puerto Rico, it's not. Dogs are completely. I would say they seem different than other animals.
Are they different to you, or are they different in themselves? Like from the point of view of the victim, of the dog, the cow, the chicken, the pig, do you think there's really a difference from the point of view of the victim, or is it just in your attitude towards these animals? Like, is it a cultural thing, or is it really a difference between the animals?
I think it's mainly a cultural thing because every culture has its own perception of the world, and you can't completely look at anything from the point of view of another culture's perspective. But there's also, every animal has a different capacity to understand and to feel and to react to its environment. Like, I don't know, a beetle has a different way it reacts and interacts with an environment than a dog, than a cow. Like, you can have a more emotional connection with your dog than you can with a cow. So, like, in a sense, they're different, but in another sense, in that they're both animals, they're the same. Does that make sense? My two distinctions.
Okay, so would you say that every animal, and I just focus on the animals that we eat at the moment, like cows, chickens, pigs, fish. Do you think they deserve moral consideration too?
In what way?
In the way of maybe extending basic rights to them, like the right not to be exploited, abused, enslaved, a right to life, for example.
What do you mean exploited, abused, and enslaved?
The same thing I would mean by exploiting, abusing, or enslaving humans, like bringing them into existence and factory farming them and turning them to hamburgers. I would say that's abusive.
Okay, so do you believe that eating animals is wrong?
Yeah, of course I do.
um,
Why don't you think it's wrong? Like, let's say we have two worlds, all else being equal. In one world, we're holocausting animals, and by that I mean slaughtering them on a mass scale. In the other world, all else being equal, we're not doing that. What world is better?
these are hard questions to ask because you're posing the opposite argument in a more of a darker light. So if I say I agree with the other side, that means I agree with the mass slaughtering of animals, and that just makes my point of view sound horrific, you know?
Yeah, but that's what, for example, vegans stand against. You know what veganism is?
Yeah.
So, what's your answer to that question?
I would say I don't think it's wrong to eat animals, so I would have to agree with the other one. But I don't think it's wrong to, with the cows and the hormones and all the things. I don't know very much about cattle, so I feel like I'm not very qualified to speak on this. But yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if I heard it correctly. So you said all else being equal, a world in which we were committing a mass holocaust of animals, that world would be better than the other one.
No.
And by better, I mean a world with less suffering, with less rights violation. That's the kind of thing I mean by better.
I think better is also subjective. It's difficult when you're using better in an argument because you have to be specific in what way it would be better and in what way.
From your point of view, from your own values.
Okay. I would want to change the wording of my side because I don't think it's right to, like, I think cattle should, be able to roam free. I think being grass-fed is good, and it also makes it healthier for humans to eat the, I don't know, beef, we'll just say, if the cows are grass-fed. I think it's wrong to abuse any animal in the sense that you're hurting that animal, but I don't think it's wrong to kill an animal to eat it. But I don't think necessarily a world where you can eat animals is better than a world than you won't eat animals. Because the bottom line is getting protein. You can get protein from beans and from eggs, and you can't get eggs because that's not vegan, but all sorts of other things.
Okay, so two things there. One is normative, the other empirical. That's actually wrong. You can get enough protein from plant-based sources. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the largest organization of nutritionists on Earth, basically they, according to all the available evidence, they came to the conclusion that plant-based diets are not only nutritionally adequate, but they provide health benefits against certain diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and they are adequate throughout all stages of the life cycle. So for pregnant women, for children, for even for athletes. So as long as you're eating enough calories, you won't have any problem with protein. Yeah. The only issue would be getting a good source of vitamin B12, which you can just take a supplement instead of murdering somebody. But then the question that I have for you is normative. Is you said that we are not abusing animals by killing them. Why wouldn't you say killing is abuse? Why wouldn't robbing somebody of future experience? Why wouldn't that be abuse?
Back to what I said at the very beginning, I believe there is something inherently different about an animal versus a human. And this is all tied about, what I believe about the Bible and about God creating us just inherently differently.
So you said it's something inherently different between a human and an animal, but I don't think you actually believe that even that, because would you say that killing a dog would be abusive if we can just choose not to kill it, for example?
I think it depends how you kill it. If you're stabbing it to death, like you suggested earlier, that's definitely not a good way to kill it.
Let's say the same way we are killing factory farm animals, like stunning them and then hanging them upside down and stabbing them in the neck and letting them drain out of blood. So that, or putting them in a gas chamber like we do with pigs. So one of those two. Would that be abusive if we do that to a dog? A young dog, we're not talking about a mercy killing a dog that is suffering or anything. Like it's a young dog that has his whole life ahead of him. We decided to do that just to eat it. Would that be abusive?
From your point of view, it would be, especially the way you're painting the picture.
Can I say something quick?
Yeah.
It's not our point of view, it's the animal's point of view. We're not the victim, you're not the victim, he's not the victim, I'm not the victim. The animals are the victims. So you're forgetting about the animals.
Yeah, so answer both questions. From your point of view, would that be abusive? And also what he said, would it be abusive from the victim's point of view?
From the victim, yes. However, back to my initial... Have you heard of syllogisms before?
Yeah, like an argument?
Yeah,
What if you were the victim? Put yourself in the victim's position.
I'm a human, not an animal. I'm inherently different.
I know. I tell him to let me do the interview because he's not capturing the audio over there, so it's gonna be a pain in the ass editing this, but whatever.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So I think from the victim's point of view, it's hard to say from the victim's point of view because the victim isn't a human. The victim is an animal.
Yeah, let's use one of Christ's teachings, the golden rule, right? Do unto others, not do unto others what you wouldn't want done to yourself. If you were that animal, what would you prefer? To be stabbed to death or to just be respected and for somebody to let you live?
I think when quoting biblical texts, it is important to see them in context. And in that context, he's talking about human relationships and how they interact with each other. I don't know exactly what context he's using, but I think it's part of the Sermon on the Mount. But he wasn't talking specific to the relationships between human and animals. He was talking between human and human. So I don't think it works to apply that to animals.
So what would you say Christ would do today if he was here? Would you say he would decide to support an animal holocaust, or would you say Christ would eat something else?
I honestly don't know, but I know in the Bible he had fish with his disciples on the beach at the end of John.
Do you mean by when he multiplied the fish?
Yeah, he did that too. He fed 5,000, he fed 2,000, but also at the end of the Gospel of John, I think the very last chapter, at the very end, he helps his disciples catch fish on one side. He says to throw the net on the other side, and they caught so many fish they couldn't even reel the net back in, but they were able to get it back in. They brought it to shore. They caught like 200 to 300, and he helped them cook fish, and they ate it on the beach.
So, do you think if Christ were here today, when there's widely available plant-based options, do you think Christ would choose to harm animals?
I don't know. I honestly can't say. I think it would be okay to eat them like he did in the Bible. However, I don't think it would be. He would approve of the way that we're treating the animals that are being eaten. Like, yeah.
Oh, okay,
I
so
don't
so he wouldn't approve of that, right? So of factory farming, for example, of the animal Holocaust.
I'm not sure. I don't want you to tie me down to any opinions because I don't have very strong ones. No, let alone trying putting words in his mouth. That's not what I want to do.
Okay, so let me ask you this: if you could choose to live a life in which you violated human rights, animal rights, or neither, what would you think would be a better option?
Currently, it depends what you mean by animal rights. I don't know what you are assuming means animal rights.
By that, I just mean a logical extension of human rights. Like, I really don't see a morally significant difference between us and animals that justifies murdering them and not us. I think we're all sentient beings that want to live. So why not give it, and why not extend moral consideration and basic rights such as the right to life to animals, but yes to humans?
Again, this goes back to what I said earlier about God making us inherently different. I think it's hard to have this discussion because we have different fundamental presuppositions about the way the world works. You presuppose that humans are equal to animals in that way, and I'm presupposing that they're fundamentally different.
So what would you say is the thing that makes us fundamentally different, that makes it okay to Holocaust one and not the other?
First, I don't like the word Holocaust, but we'll run with it.
But I'm just using the dictionary definition of slaughter on a mass scale. Do you agree that
Oh,
we're doing
okay.
that to animals?
Okay, yes. Yes, we are slaughtering them on a mass scale.
This, by the way, 80 billion land animals per year. There's only 8 billion humans. We're slaughtering 80 billion animals per year because we like their taste, and trillions of sea life. So
And is that U.S. alone or the whole globe?
the whole globe, yeah.
Okay. You asked specifically what makes us different.
Yeah, what's the thing that makes us fundamentally different from animals that justifies the slaughter on a mass scale of one but not the other?
I feel like a broken record. The same thing I said at the beginning about God making us different. God made man, Adam and Eve, at the beginning in his image, and he put us to be in charge of his creation, and in that way we are above to take care of them, but also we can use them for meat and we can eat them.
So I'm gonna ask you a hypothetical to test your logic a little bit. So let's say we found a group of humans that it turns out are not created in the image of God. Like, let's say a race of humans that are here on Earth that turns out specifically God came down and said, those here, they're subjectively identical to the rest of humanity, but they're not created in my image. Would you say it would be fine to Holocaust them like we're doing to animals?
No, I think it's impossible for there to be a human that isn't created in his image.
Impossible in what modality? When you say impossible, do you mean logically, physically impossible? What do you mean by that?
Just by the way that God created the earth. When I say in his image, I mean that he has, this is going more into theology, he has attributes that he's given to us. Like, again, not all humans have the ability to use logic. Not all humans have the ability to feel the emotions that we do just because intellectually capacity limits them. I mean, I don't know if I even have the words completely, if I've gotten the correct education to be able to verbalize everything that I believe properly. But there's something inherent to humans that animals do not have that makes them different. And you can't have a human that doesn't have those qualities.
Okay, so I just think there's an issue that I have with your claim that it is impossible. But when somebody says it's impossible, when I hear that, it's a modal expression, so be impossible in either a logical modality or a physical modality. So there should be like a law of logic, like a contradiction, for example, or breaking a law of physics. So what would you say would be the contradiction with a human that is not created in the image of God?
Um, Probably because in the creation story, God said that He made man in His image. In His image, He created them. And so, if there's a man, like it's impossible for there to be a man created in the image of God, not created in the image of God. That's the law of non-contradiction.
Okay, so the contradiction would be man is and isn't created in the image of God. Okay, so what would you define? What would you say man is? What do you mean by man?
Human, men and women.
And what do you mean by human? Are you using like a biological definition of like Homo sapiens?
Like biological. Just when you're born out of the womb.
Okay, so if you're using a biological definition, that basically means being able to interbreed with. So if so, let's say another hypothetical. We found a group of beings that were not biological human. Let's say a Neanderthal is still among us or something. It's not technically a human; it's another species. Would it be fine to Holocaust Neanderthals for hamburgers?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what those are.
It's like a biological cousin of humanity that used to exist. They became extinct.
I don't even. I don't know what to say because I don't know.
We let's say we couldn't interbreed with them, so they're another species. They're not even human. Would it be fine to eat them?
I think I don't know how to answer this question because again, don't know anything about whatever this species is.
Okay, so let's just use any hypothetical. Let's say we found aliens that were sapient like us, so they were intelligent, but they were obviously from another species. They're not even from the same planet. Would it be fine to Holocaust them?
I honestly don't know. My inclination, my first thought wouldn't be let's eat them. It'd be like let's run away.
But you would be agnostic as to whether or not it would be wrong to Holocaust them and eat them?
I think I wouldn't have an opinion unless it happened. I wouldn't necessarily say agnostic because that just plain means you don't know, and I'm not that clueless, but I don't have enough of an opinion to say it out loud.
Yeah, I think that would be a reductio on your view. I think that would be a fundamental value difference there. I think that if we were to find aliens that were intelligent and sapient and had language and culture and stuff like that, and if you were asked the question, would it be wrong or not to Holocaust them, and you had to think about that, I think that that's a reductio on your view. But so let me ask you this. Do you think veganism makes sense to you? Do you think like people that decide to go vegan are doing something at least good?
I mean, if you're trying to protect the animals, I don't have a problem with that, and I think as long as you're not, I don't know, judging other people for eating animals, I don't think it's like I don't have a problem with being vegan. I'll totally support you if you want to be vegan and that's what you believe is right. Then I'd be like, do it. Do you think that's what's right?
And you said you have problem with people judging others for doing something different or something.
Yeah, judging in the ways and looking down upon. Yeah, there's two different ways you can judge people, as in looking down upon them for doing X, Y, or Z, and then judging as in deciding whether you think it's right or wrong. I think one sense is okay to judge, and as in deciding what do I think about this, and then another sense, judging that's wrong, is in looking down upon someone for doing something.
Okay, so for example, you would judge somebody that eats other humans in that second sense. Like if you would see somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, and you would judge them in that second definition that you gave of judging. Like you would look at that action and you would think that's wrong, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically what vegans are doing. Like we're looking at the situation of the animal holocaust. We think it's wrong. But you said you don't think it's wrong what we're currently doing to animals?
I think some of the things we're doing to animals are wrong, but other things aren't. I don't know enough to specify which ones I believe are wrong, which ones aren't, but I do think some things that we are doing to animals are wrong.
Why wouldn't you say that's enough to not support that industry? If there's some weird stuff, like ethically problematic stuff going on there, why support it?
I think two things. There are other options that you can have. You can purchase meat from local buyers that allow their cattle to roam around that are grass fed. And there's a second difference that's being ruthlessly honest. You have to go way out of your way to eat meat that's been treated correctly before it was made into food. So I think not just me, but a lot of people just find it incredibly difficult, and it's more expensive to eat better meat. Like, there's just a plethora of reasons. Not saying they're right reasons, of why a lot of people wouldn't, switch to better meat. But as for me, yeah, I think it's hard to decide.
Yeah, and we also have another option. We have widely available non-sentient plants to eat, that don't have a capacity for suffering. So you do know that's not ethically problematic because they're not even sentient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so at least it makes a little bit of sense to you. So
I can
yeah.
see how other people think that. I can completely understand the logic. It makes sense.
Awesome, and I hope you reflect a little bit on your values after this conversation, and maybe you move in the direction of being 100% vegan.
Thanks for talking.
Thank you for accepting the conversation.
Awesome.
Awesome. Have a great day, guys.
You too.
My leg is asleep now.
My right leg is I can't feel it.